I almost undressed in front of a hidden live streaming camera. The tip of my index finger pressed against the cold glass, but there was no gap. I stared at it, my breath hitching in my throat, waiting for the physics of light to correct itself. Usually, when you touch a standard mirror, there is a tiny space between your fingertip and its reflection, the thickness of the glass surface. But here, in room 4 of the Gilded Oak Boutique Inn, my finger touched its twin directly, point to point, flesh to phantom flesh. I pulled my hand back as if the mirror had burned me. I stood there in the silence of the room, the only sound the aggressive ticking of a vintage clock on the wall and the blood rushing in my ears like a white noise machine turned up to maximum volume. It was a two-way mirror, and it was positioned directly across from the bed. I took a step back, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of my boots. I looked around the room. It was charming, rustic, exposed brick, heavy velvet curtains, an antique armoire that smelled of cedar and history. It was the kind of place you book for a solo weekend to decompress, to drink wine and read books and forget that your job is slowly eating your soul. I had checked in 20 minutes ago. I hadn't even unpacked my suitcase. It was sitting by the door, a hard-shell carry-on that suddenly looked less like luggage and more like a life raft. "Don't panic," I whispered. My voice sounded thin, brittle. Maybe it's just old glass. Maybe it's a manufacturing defect. But I knew. Deep down in the reptile part of my brain, the part that raises the hair on your arms when you're being hunted, I knew. I grabbed my phone from the bedspread. I turned off the overhead chandelier. The room plunged into a heavy, twilight gloom, illuminated only by the streetlights filtering through the sheer inner curtains. I walked back to the mirror. It was huge, framed in ornate, heavy gold leaf. It looked like something out of a fairy tale. I turned on my phone's flashlight. I pressed the lens flush against the glass. I squinted, blocking out the side glare with my cupped hand. At first, I saw nothing, just the harsh flare of the LED reflecting back at me. But then, I shifted the angle, just a fraction of an inch. There was a glint. It wasn't a reflection. It was a source. A tiny, unblinking eye staring back from the darkness behind the wall. A lens. I stumbled back, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I felt sick. Physically, violently sick. I had undressed in front of mirrors 1,000 times in my life. I had never once thought to check them. I only checked this one because of a video I scrolled past at 3 a.m. 3 nights ago. A random, 15-second clip that saved my life. I looked at the mirror again. It wasn't just a piece of glass anymore. It was a window, and someone was on the other side. I needed to be sure. I needed proof. If I called the police and I was wrong, I was the crazy girl destroying a small business. If I was right, I walked to the side of the heavy frame. I dug my fingers into the gap between the gold wood and the exposed brick wall. It was heavy, solid, but it shifted. I pulled. The mirror didn't swing out on hinges. It wasn't a medicine cabinet. It was mounted on a track. It slid. With a grinding sound of metal on metal that screamed through the quiet room, the mirror moved 2 inches to the left. And there it was. A rectangular hole, cut with surgical precision into the drywall. And sitting inside that dark cavity, mounted on a small tripod bracket screwed into the stud, was a camera. It wasn't a battery-operated spy cam you buy on Amazon. It wasn't a nanny cam. It was a high-end, hardwired surveillance unit. A thick gray Ethernet cable ran from the back of the camera, drilled through the stud, and disappeared deep into the infrastructure of the building. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a previous guest leaving something behind. This was architecture. The red light on the camera wasn't blinking. It was solid. It was recording. Or worse, it was streaming. What happens in the next 20 minutes isn't just a police raid. It is the unraveling of a nightmare that has been running silently for decades. They are going to find a laptop screen that is still glowing. And on that screen, in high definition, something far more sinister than this hidden camera. Follow on-screen instruction for full video.